welcome back to my kitchen. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make my famous scone recipe. This is a super simple recipe. It's a base that I use for just about any flavor, any variation of scones that I make. It's so easy to do. It takes about an hour in total, including the baking and the prep time, so it's really not very time consuming. The best part about this recipe is you can make this ahead of time, pop them in the fridge, and then you can bake them in the morning so that you've got fresh scones right when you get up in the morning. And they only take 20 minutes in the oven, so it's really not that long. So today I'm gonna be doing a different variation. I normally do savory scones, but I thought I'd try something different. I found some frozen dark cherries at the supermarket, so I'm gonna try doing dark cherries and dark chocolate today. So I think that'll be a good combo. Let's get started. First things first, I'm gonna go over all of the ingredients that you're gonna be needing for this recipe. Now, in this bowl here, I have all of my dry ingredients. So for my dry ingredients, I've got 2 cups of all-purpose flour. I have half a cup of white sugar, 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder, half a teaspoon of salt, and half a teaspoon of cinnamon. And I've made sure that I sifted my flour in here along with my baking powder and then added in my sugar and my salt and everything else. You wanna make sure that you sift your flour. That's super, super important. And now in this bowl over here, I have all of my wet ingredients. So for wet ingredients, I am using half a cup of heavy cream, 1 egg, and 2.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract. If you're using this base recipe to make a savory scone, you can omit the vanilla extract. The other thing is if you don't want to use heavy cream, if you're lactose intolerant, you can't have cream, you can substitute coconut milk is fine, 2% milk or whole milk or even buttermilk will work just as well. I've made these before using regular 2% milk, I've made them using almond milk, and I've made them using coconut milk, and I thought that every variation tasted great. So that's entirely up to you. So for my cherries, I measured out 1 cup of whole pitted cherries, and then I whizzed that in my food processor so that they look like little crumbs like that. Because the whole cherries are really big and I don't want like massive whole cherries in my scones. I want them like evenly distributed. So that's 1 cup of whole cherries that I've whizzed. Now, if you're using a different kind of fruit, you can just measure out 1 cup of frozen berries or whatever you're using. Right, so here I've got my butter, and this is just like a brick of butter that you get at the grocery store. It's 2 cups of butter come in one of these bricks. So what you wanna do is measure out half a cup. So it's really easy to do. There's guidelines on the foil that you can follow. So all I do is I cut this in half so I know that I've got 1 cup and 1 cup, like nicely separated. Okay, so cutting this in half. It's really difficult cutting frozen butter, just FYI. Okay, so now I've got 2 1-cup portions, and now this I'm gonna cut in half again so that I've got half a cup. So, there we go, that's half. And now we only need half a cup of butter for this recipe. So what I'm gonna do with this half is cut it into slightly smaller cubes so that my food processor can pulse it evenly. Just like that. So I'm cutting this into about 6 little cubes. There you go, so they look like that. Now, another thing that I like to do when I make my scone recipe is I like to chill my food processor, like the bowl and the blade. So I've got that in the fridge right now. And the reason I like it chilled is because, like I said before, you want your dough as cold as you can possibly get it. So I'm gonna go get that and then we'll move on to the next steps. Right, so I've got my food processor bowl here, straight out of the fridge, nice and cold. And to this bowl, I am going to transfer my dry ingredients. So that was my flour mixture. And then we're gonna add the butter to this, cubes that I chopped. And now I'm gonna fit that onto the machine. And basically all you wanna do is pulse this so that it resembles like a nice crumbly mixture. You don't wanna overdo it because you do still wanna keep some nice sort of like smallish sized chunks of butter, because once those bits of butter hit the heat in the oven, they're gonna release air pockets, and those air pockets are how you get a nice fluffy scone. So do not overmix this butter and flour mixture, okay? All right, so you can see now this is what it looks like. It's crumbly, and I can literally feel these little bits of butter in there. They're like tiny little balls, and that's exactly what I want, because those little balls, when they hit the heat in the oven, they're gonna create the air pockets that I want so that I get nice, fluffy, moist scones. I'm gonna go back to my original bowl that I had my dry ingredients in, and we're gonna dump all of that flour back in here. Now, to this flour mixture, we're gonna add our wet ingredients. So I'm just gonna pour that in, and with a spatula, I'm going to mix this together. And you kind of want this to resemble like a coarse, like wet dough. So that's what it looks like right now. I'm gonna keep on mixing a bit because I want it to come together slightly more before I turn this out onto my counter and start kneading it by hand. That's my nice crumbly scone mixture. Now to this, I'm gonna add my cherries that I've chopped up in my food processor. Gently mix that together. Now, a lot of people prefer to do this step in the food processor as well, like adding the wet ingredients and then whizzing it together. And you absolutely can do that. I've done that in the past. The only problem I find with that is the food processor can overwork your dough very quickly. So if you're gonna do that, you really need to keep an eye on it, and you need to make sure you don't overwork your dough. Otherwise, you're gonna get dry scones. So I'm flouring my work surface here, and I'm just gonna roll this out, well, dump this out, and then use my hands to work it all together now. So you can see it's super crumbly. Right, so got my massive mound of scone mix here, and using my hands, I'm just going to bring this all together, and it's like freezing cold from that frozen butter and from my frozen cherries, but that's fine, that's what I want. And basically, I just want to shape this into like one giant disc that can kind of like hold together. Right, so now I've got it in a nicely shaped disc. I think mine will probably make 6 this time around. So that's what my disc looks like. Now I'm gonna go ahead and cut that into wedges. I'm gonna use a really big, nice, super sharp knife for this, and just start by cutting it in half. So just like that. So now I'm going to transfer each triangle over to my baking sheet. This is really cool, actually. When you cut into it, you can actually see like the little bits of butter, like the frozen bits, and that's what we want, right? Because those are going to open up in the oven. You just have to be like super gentle and careful when you do this so they don't fall apart on you. And last wedge. Right, so those are my scones on their tray. Now what I'm gonna do is pop these in the fridge, or you can pop them in the freezer if you're short on time. But I'm gonna put them in the fridge for about 15 minutes, or you can put them in the freezer for like 7 minutes, whatever you want. But while they're refrigerating or freezing, I'm gonna preheat my oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. This step where you put them in the fridge is super important because I want my cherries to get nice and cold again. I want my butter to stay cold, and I want my dough nice and cold, because remember, chilled dough when you're making scones makes better scones when they hit the oven. So my oven is preheated. My scones are nice and cold. I've just taken them out of the fridge. Now before I bake them, I'm gonna go ahead and sprinkle them with a little bit of turbinado sugar. When you bake this in the oven, you get like a really nice crust on top of whatever you're baking, because it doesn't quite like fully melt. It just gets nice and crunchy when it hits that heat from the oven. I'm not doing too much because once these come out of the oven and they're nice and cool, I am going to drizzle them with some dark chocolate. Brilliant. All right, so now these are gonna go in the oven for 20 to 23 minutes. So my scones are ready. I've let them bake and cool, so now they're ready to be decorated, and this is what they look like out of the oven, nice and cool. So you can see I got them nice and brown with crunchy tops, and they're still soft on the bottom. What I'm just doing here is in this bowl I've measured out a 1/4 cup of dark chocolate chips, and I'm using the Nestle Toll House 50% dark chocolate chips. And I've just nuked this in the microwave for 30 seconds. And I did that 3 times, so 3 30-second increments. And I added about a 1/4 teaspoon of butter to it. And I'm just mixing this together, making sure that there's no clumps of chocolate. And it should look nice and smooth and ribbony, just like that. Over here, I have a piping bag. Now, this is just from Michael's. It's a Wilton brand standard, I think like 16 or 14-inch piping bag. But if you don't have one of these at home, you can just as easily use a Ziploc bag and just snip the end off of it. And what I like to do is put my bag inside a mug, like that, to hold it upright while I pour my chocolate into it. And then you want to squeeze all the chocolate to the end. Twist the end of the bag, and we're going to snip a little bit of the top off. Just like that. And now, the fun part, you get to drizzle your scones. So, I'll hold that up for you so you can see. Just like, oh, like that. Right, so that is my dark chocolate, dark cherry scone recipe for you guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Please let me know if you try these yourself at home, what variations you end up using. I'd love to see. Tag me in your pictures. Don't forget to like my video, follow my channel and my Instagram page, and leave me a comment down below if there's anything in particular that you want to see. Thank you so much for watching, you guys, and we'll see you later. Bye.